Thank you for joining us. You've heard my layman's breakdown of these reports we're going to go over. Break it down for us.
Well, here's the bottom line. Epigenetics means power, and it means power for us. Genetics, the notion of genetics has to do with destiny. It says that whatever is in your genes is the way you're going to be. And this is one of the most disempowering ideas in all of health and in all of biology. The idea of epigenetics and the idea of a transcendent level of control over the genome, which is what breast milk represents, by the way, puts the power back in the hands of the individual, takes the power away from the hands of the Leviathan, as I call it, the beast, the state, the model, however you want to term it. And this is one of the most powerful ideas that we have in all of health. And it's something that we've known about for a long time, but because of the hegemony of the medical model, the hegemony of the medical professionals, most people believe that whatever is in their genes is the way that they're going to be. How many times have you heard people say, oh, it's just in my genes, oh, it's my genetics, oh, it runs in the family? The notion that there is a control point that is transcendent, or epi, that's what the word epi means, to genetic destiny is a powerful, powerful idea for the individual, and it's something that we want to exploit. You were bringing to the forefront the idea of breast milk. Breast milk is an epigenetic vehicle that is designed to turn genes on and off in response to the environment that both the mother is confronting and the baby is confronting. Please, mothers, breast milk is a divine programming source. Alex, you hit the nail on the head. You called it a high-tech programming device. That's really what it is. It's a divine programming device that's designed to keep a baby healthy. It's
literally full of the antibodies, everything. And again, quantifying this from the studies, but I want you to expand on it with your expertise, studying this for years. Pharmacist Ben Fuchs joining us. Is that suddenly there's all these genetic disorders, and people are suddenly, 10,000% increases in pediatric children's cancers, 3,000% in breast cancer, and they go, oh, it's because you have bad genes. Well, right. Of course, if you're not getting what you need, you are predisposed in your genes to malfunction this way. If you don't have the building blocks and you weren't breastfed, and instead you're given a bunch of deadly vaccines, they want their system. I mean, why should anyone get a hepatitis shot at birth? I mean, is the baby going to be having, sex? Or is the baby going to be injecting heroin? And right. It's incredible.
Breast milk is the best vaccination you could get. It's God's vaccination. Breast milk protects us from fatty liver disease. It protects us from autoimmune disease. It protects us from cancer. It protects us from cholesterol and blood fats. It protects us from heart disease. These are factors that are in breast milk that the baby is going to get and that are going to impart protection for the baby for the rest of the baby's life. This is so important, and that doesn't even include the psychological benefits to these epigenetic factors. We know lack of these epigenetic factors can result in stress diseases, in alert helplessness, emotional disorders, autism, schizophrenia. This is above and beyond the protection that we get from physical maladies.
And by the way, while you're talking, I'm showing mainstream research papers from prestigious universities. This is well known.
This has been well known. I graduated pharmacy school in 1986. I had professors telling me about epigenetics back then. Today we're starting to hear about it more and more, but we've known about a control point of the genetics, a control point to genes for 50 or 60 years. In fact, the word epigenetics was coined in the 1950s, I believe. So these are not new ideas. These may be new ideas to the mainstream, but these are not new ideas to biologists.
By the way, I'm showing .gov, the Centers for Disease Control, the NIH, you name it, they're all admitting this.
Well, geneticists know this idea of one gene, one protein, one gene, one disease. Today I was reading about how they found the gene for baldness. You know how you hear this every once in a while? Yeah. Oh, they found the gene for Alzheimer's disease. They found the gene for cancer. There is no one gene for baldness or for Alzheimer's disease or for cancer. Genes turn on and off based on epigenetic factors that are nutritional, that are emotional, that are psychological, and what's more, and this is very important when it comes to things like genetically modified organisms, genes relate to other genes and turn on and off via communication with other genes. So when you manipulate the genome by pulling out genes or putting in genes, you're manipulating the entire genome, and you never have no idea what you're going to be getting. This is such an important idea for scientists to be so glib with the fundamental component of the intelligence of life, which is what the genome is.
Well, obviously, mammals need their mother's milk. And they've pretty much got it to the point where they harass women that try to breastfeed. The media acts like it's weird. I mean, if they have their way, someday it will be a conspiracy theory to say that women ever even breastfed or even gave birth. Notice how like 60-something% of hospitals now force women to have cesareans because then every other baby they get to do that. It affects the child. I mean, it's just all a scam.
When a baby comes out of the womb, it's coated with bacteria, and that bacteria become that baby's personal health guardians for the rest of that baby's life. That bacteria, those bacteria that coat the baby as it leaves the womb and enters into the world, they get into the baby's mouth, they go into the baby's digestive tract, they implant in the baby's womb. Those bacteria protect a baby from colon cancer, from digestive distress, from heart disease, from emotional disorders, from autism. And when you have a baby who's born cesarean, he's completely deprived of those bacteria. So what do the doctors tell you? Oh, we'll just give you a little supplement. We'll give you a little probiotic. We'll give you a little formula. This is not the divine way. This is not the way that nature has intended it, has intended babies to be born into the world. It's no wonder, Alex, that we're confronted with the largest chronic disease crisis in the history of mankind, despite the fact that we have the most medicine.
It's no wonder people are on antibiotics from birth till death. It's no wonder people glow in the dark now and you know, look like they can't even pick up a 5-pound weight.
Oh, and we haven't even gotten to the bisphenol A and the pesticides and the toxic effects of epigenetics, the relationship between poisons, the relationship between pollutants, the relationship between prescription medications and the genome.
Well, I want you to get into that in the next segment, but right now, because I heard your show a few weeks ago, you were breaking it all down, get into the science, the different cofactors that's in the breast milk, so people understand how important this is, that the major wiring of the brain happens the first 2 years, you know, and then up to age 5, it's fully mapping. I mean, this is the time they tell, put kids on low-fat diets. Well, it's trans fats that are bad. Don't children need more fat than adults?
Heck yes, and what's more, they need more cholesterol than adults. How do you like that? Cholesterol, which we've been talking about, and this, you and I have been talking about it for probably for 3 or 4 years now, about how important cholesterol is. Cholesterol is a prime building substance, not just for cells, not just for muscles, but for the brain and for the nervous system. Alex, it's like there's a conspiracy to destroy our minds. There's a conspiracy to destroy our ability to think clearly. There's a conspiracy to destroy the prefrontal cortex, the executive center, the choice center, the part of our brain that makes us human. There's a conspiracy to promote the lizard brain, the reptilian brain, the survival brain, the fear brain, the part of our brain that shuts down our ability to heal and to thrive. We are in survival mode psychologically, we're in survival mode emotionally, and now we're in survival mode epigenetically and physically through manipulation of the genome, through prescription drugs, through poisons in the environment, and through lack of information, through misunderstandings that promote the idea that we have to be what our genetics say we are. The fact of the matter is, you go to any geneticist and they'll tell you that this idea of one gene being related to one protein or one gene being related to one kind of specific physical feature is not true. It's simplistic and it's ignorant, and what's worse, it's a control trip. And it's a profit center as well, because it allows pharmaceutical companies to come up with medications that manipulate the genes. And this is what the latest pharmaceuticals do. They work at the genetic level, with this idea that by pharmacologically addressing the gene, by pharmacologically changing the gene, you can impart health. How the heck can a human being who knows nothing about the genetics of the body, which is really basically what we know, 1 to 2% of the gene is thought to be active.
Let me interrupt. Just look at what antibiotics were great but overused, all the nightmares they created. Look at how everything ends up turning out to be worse down the road. Now they've got thousands of facilities with gene guns, as you know, just randomly splicing RNA, DNA, chimeras. I mean, talk about that some. What do you make of crossing?
Chimeras?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, H.G. Wells wrote, how do you like the fact that H.G. Wells wrote The Island of Dr. Moreau in 1896? 120 years ago, he knew that there would be this idea of manipulating genomes of different animals, building things together, creating these hybrid...
He wrote about atomic wars in 1900. He was a master Illuminati.
Isn't that amazing how he knew all this stuff? It's crazy. But the idea of chimeras is really what we're confronting. This is the next likely step in genetic modification. We have GMO plants, which are basically chimera plants. How big a leap is it to chimera animals? How big a leap is it to chimera humanoids, for that matter?
They've already done it. They don't have any rights. They just keep them in laboratories. It's on record. But, I mean, you know, the animal rights groups talk about animals having rights, which I agree they do have some, obviously. How we treat animals is how we treat ourselves, especially the higher order, elephants, dogs, you name it. But what about these chimeras? Don't they have rights? You know, these pigs that have human genetics in them?
Right. Chimera rights. That's the next step, you know? I mean, it truly is a scary world that we're confronting. But Alex, I'll tell you, I've said this so many times, we can't let fear get the best of us. We've got to expose this. We've got to not participate in the system that is not designed for our benefit. It's designed for, as you said, a select few, an elite few. And we have to refuse to participate in this in all ways. We have to stop eating the corporate swill. We have to stop participating in the medical model. We have to begin to understand how to control our own bodies. Because at the end of the day, we do have
No, I agree. In the
control.
next segment, I want to get into solutions, but and I want to be clear. I'm not saying you're saying this, but I want to be clear. I'm not fear-mongering. I want people to know how bad it is, like telling my neighbor, hey, your house is on fire.
Right, you have to know.
Exactly, because people need to know we're already deep into this.
We are deep into this. That's absolutely the case. I mean, by the time the lay public hears about something, it's already been in the scientific literature for decades, sometimes for 3 or 4, even 5 decades. So if you hear about something in the New York Times or in the Daily News or in Time Magazine or Newsweek, you can rest assured that scientists have been discussing this in the literature for decades, and it's the same with epigenetics and genetics. Genetics, the genome was discovered in the 1950s. The ideas of epigenetics was discovered shortly thereafter. Today we know that our genes blink on and off like Christmas tree lights, but still, not only does the average person not understand this, the average medical professional doesn't understand this, that our genes are as flexible as our environment, and this is the beautiful thing about epigenetics.
But then also want to look at what you're saying about epigenetics, the negative stuff. What is the bisphenol A doing? What is the other chemicals out there, like the glyphosate? What is it doing with our genes? Well, they admit it. It's flipping on the breast cancer. Get into what's in colostrum, what's in breast milk, and then get into other epigenetics, positive things people can do from your deep research and all the studies you sent me.
Well, we'll talk about the positive things here in a second. By the way, there's a whole new branch. It's not that new. It's probably about 20 years old of science called nutrigenomics, which is the study of the effect of nutrients on the genome. As it turns out, nutrients are powerful epigenetic factors. As a matter of fact, most women know that when they're pregnant, they got to take folic acid to prevent birth defects. Well, as it turns out, folic acid is an epigenetic factor that protects against a major birth defect called spina bifida. So epigenetics has been used even by the medical mainstream without even calling it epigenetics. We'll talk about that here in a second. This idea of colostrum and breast milk, you know, you ask what's in colostrum, what's in breast milk. We know of nearly 100 different compounds that are in colostrum and breast milk, and that's just the ones we know about. Chances are we'll find more as we do more and more research. Colostrum being a form of breast milk, being a form of mother's milk. It's the first mother's milk, the first milk that the baby gets. And like breast milk, it contains immune-regulating substances, substances that build the immune system, something called PRP, proline-rich peptide. That's a hormone-like substance that stimulates the thymus, which is the body's main immune gland. This idea of the immune system being built by mother's milk and by colostrum is very important to recognize. And by the way, when I say the immune system, I mean the digestive system as well, because the digestive system and the immune system are basically the same system. Some 80% of your immune activity is located in the digestive tract. See, when babies are born, when mammal babies are born, because mammals tend to have big heads, and especially humans have big heads, they have to come out of the womb prematurely. So human beings and mammals come out of the womb prematurely, which means specifically their immune system and their digestive system are not fully matured. And this is a big problem because toxins get into the body through the digestive tract. An immune system that is suppressed will compromise the baby. So nature has devised this wonderful system for growing the digestive tract, for supporting the growth of the immune system, or supporting the growth of the digestive tract and supporting the healthy immune system. And that is what mother's milk and that's what breast milk is. And that's why when you say what's in breast milk, it's hard to quantify all the different things because there are so many of these growth factors and immune factors and anti-inflammatory factors and transfer factors and antibiotic-like substance, something called lactoferrin, something called transferrin. These are substances that bind iron, iron being very important for bacteria.
But that's just junk that came out of the creature that just made you.
Right.
I mean, why would this female have anything for the creature it literally just wove in its womb? I mean, you're a weirdo to think that babies need what came from the place it was just created. I mean, that's crazy.
Alex, we all need breast milk. It's not even just babies. Everybody needs breast milk, but especially developing infants whose cells are dividing rapidly and who can't eat food. You know, babies can't eat food. They're not supposed to be, they're not designed to be eating food. So nature has designed this exquisite system of growth factors and fats and vitamins and minerals. that are in the breast milk. So what's in breast milk? You've got growth factors, immune factors. You've got carbohydrates, something called oligosaccharides, something called glycoconjugates. These are substances, sugars, that adhere to specific sites on the digestive tract and the gastrointestinal tract that keep bacteria from getting in. You've got bacterial support, as I was saying earlier. So the baby's microbiome, that is the bacteria that will live in the baby's gut for the rest of the baby's life, will implant and proliferate appropriately. These bacteria produce vitamin D. These bacteria make B vitamins. These bacteria help fight bad bacteria. You know, one of the biggest problems we have in our culture in terms of health is digestive distress, digestive disorder. Some 60 to 70% of Americans are dealing with some kind of digestive stress or digestive disorder. 30% of Americans have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, another sort of digestive problem. How much of this is related to the fact that babies are being born cesarean? How much of this is related to the fact that babies are not being breastfed? How much of this is related to the fact that even if mothers are savvy enough to be breastfeeding, they're typically not going to be breastfeeding long enough, or they're nutritionally deficient and their breast milk will be nutritionally deficient? How much of of this epidemic of digestive disease, as well as immune disease, as well as cancer, as well as blood diseases and heart disease, is related to the fact that we're not getting the breast milk, that babies are being born cesarean? We don't know. So anyway, going back to all these components that are in breast milk, one of the most important are prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are anti-inflammatory factors that keep inflammation down. We know that almost all disease states have an inflammatory component, and we know that many of these disease states are initiated by inflammation. Anti-inflammatory factors that are in breast milk suppress pro-inflammatory factors that are in toxins, that are in food, the foods that we eat, that are increased by lack of nutrition. There are also substances that help control the appetite of the baby. There's a substance called leptin that's found in breast milk. Leptin is a little protein that suppresses the appetite. If many folks who are interested in weight loss know about leptin and know about strategies for increasing leptin. Well, as it turns out, breast milk is a wonderful source of leptin to help suppress the baby's appetite, to help keep the baby satisfied. There's also special proteins in breast milk that help vitamins travel through the blood, specifically fat vitamins like vitamin D and vitamin E and vitamin A. These fatty vitamins don't travel through the blood effectively because they're fatty and the blood is watery. They tend to glob up, so nature has a system of binding proteins which literally shuttle these vitamins around through the blood. Well, guess what? Breast milk is a wonderful source of these vitamin-binding proteins. Speaking of vitamins, the fatty vitamins, which are so important for health and so important for building tissue, are packed in breast milk, as are all fats. Breast milk is loaded with fat. Probably 60% or so of breast milk is fat. And by the way, you mentioned how we've been just hypnotized with this idea of low-fat this and low-fat that, and you got to watch your fats and you got to stay away from saturated fats. Today, savvy nutritionists understand that not only is fat important as a source of energy for the heart and for the brain, but when you eat fat, that allows your body to access and transport fatty vitamins, vitamins D,
well,
vitamins
I even
E,
see in mainstream news now what you and others were saying decades ago. They're now admitting that so many people have Alzheimer's because they're on these low-fat diets.
That's right.
And you need the coconut oil, all of it, that they got taken out of the popcorn back in the early 90s. I mean, look, the system knows what they're doing. And then you put people on statins that on record literally just eat your brain because your brain's made out of cholesterol. I mean, this is insane.
Alex, the quintessential human biomolecule, which separates human beings and animals from plants, is cholesterol. If you want to be a fern plant, stop making cholesterol. That's the distinction between a plant which sits in the ground and doesn't move.
Women wonder why their bodies fall apart,
exactly.
why their skin falls apart, and they're putting basically cholesterol creams on their face instead of eating it.